here to explore, are we really breaking the bias? So it's my pleasure to introduce our award-winning panel guests. So we have Sharon Ascroft, who's the HR Director of Trust Forward. We have Hannah Litt, who is the Head of Resourcing and Inclusion at Motorpoint. Dora Bogagni, who is the General Manager for Customer Experience, Innovation and Transformation at Toyota GB. Louise Reynolds, who is Vehicle Line Director, Platform Technologies at JLR. And Kira Raisin, Commercial Director at V12 Vehicle Finance. They're all award-winning women from the automotive sector who have got some, I think, some interesting perspectives to share today. I'm going to start by reflecting a little on the real origins of International Women's Day. So, International Women's Day has become synonymous, particularly in the UK, with celebrating and recognising achievements of women. So obviously that is always a good thing. I would say we don't really need a specific day to be focusing on the achievements of women. It should be every day that we're doing that. But I think the issue is that it's become a little bit commercialised with lots of performative and patronising PR stunts, kind of recognising the lovely ladies that work in the company one day a year. So we've got to really go back in time to think about the origins of International Women's Day. And its origins were in the socialist movement in the United States in the early 20th century, when women were asking for the right to vote and promoting equal rights with men. The most radical use of International Women's Day was actually March the 8th, 2017 in Petrograd in Russia, when women actually rose up and demanded an end to World War I, end to the food shortages and the end to the reign of Tsar Nicholas. It grew to become a mass strike. It turned into what we now know as being the Second Russian Revolution, leading to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas and the introduction of the women's right to vote in Russia. So a lot of action took place on March the 8th, 1917. So in the late 60s and 70s, it moved on again and it became adopted by second wave, what we call second wave feminists across Europe as a day of activism, calling for equal pay, equal economic opportunity, equal rights, reproductive rights, the right to take birth control, subsidised childcare and the prevention of violence against women. And in 1977, the United Nations General Assembly invited member states to officially proclaim March the 8th as a United Nations holiday for women's rights and world peace. So we must take note that the essence of International Women's Day is actually the acknowledgement that women across the world still don't have equal rights to men, and that it's actually a call to take real action to change that situation. So the theme for this year's International Women's Day was breaking the bias, implying, of course, that much of the inequality women face is through bias by both men and women, whether it's intentional or whether it's simply systemic in society in a world that's historically been designed by men for men. But interestingly, a United Nations report in 2020 found globally almost 90% of men and women hold some kind of bias against females. So it's important that we have to try and break that bias.
I think one point I'd like to make is, thinking about those reflections on International Women's Day, whilst gender bias is so much more talked about and there's much more of a spotlight on it, we have to recognise this isn't a thing of the past. This is live and present today. And probably just a couple of examples from this very week that we've just been in that I wanted to share in terms of the biases that I faced as a woman this week. I had a telephone call yesterday with a company, an external company, wanting to look at partnering with our business. And as part of my overview, I gave them an update on our business, what the kind of strategy is, etc. And I happened to mention that 57% of women in our business, or 57% of the senior roles are held by women in our business, which outstrips that industry norm of that's typically 10%. And the response that I got was just not what I was expecting. The guy turned around and said, "Wow, you're brave." And I was, "What do you mean?" And he said, "The only time I've ever worked in a team that's dominated by a woman, there was nobody ever at work because they were all off either having babies or looking after their sick children." And this was yesterday, and I couldn't believe it. Needless to say, we won't be partnering with that company. But the other thing was, I was fortunate enough earlier in the week to be shortlisted for a Business Leader of the Year awards, and I was shortlisted with 4 men who were all MDs and CEOs of other lender businesses and banks in the UK. And a comment made to me earlier in the week is, "You're a shoo-in to win that award." I was like, "What makes you think that? You know, I've not even seen the nominations." And he said, "Well, you're the only woman shortlisted, and they wouldn't dare give that award to a man, given the spotlight that's on D&I at the moment." So I thought, for me, just as another wake-up call this week, going, we have so much more work to do if people think it's appropriate, you know, to make those comments.
When we're talking about gender biases, it's really, really important for us to really recognise that even within gender biases, not everyone has the same experience, that we really have to think about the barriers that women have are not the same for everyone. So we really have to start thinking about the intersectionality. And when we sit here and we talk about smashing glass ceilings and all that good stuff, we have to, even as women, we have to make sure, well, we're not smashing those glass ceilings, and where progress has been made for leadership, for women going into those leadership roles. Who are those women that are going into those leadership roles? What are the demographic of those women going into those leadership roles? And when we're smashing those glass ceilings, are we still reinforcing those concrete ceilings for other women? And we've all got a responsibility, and that shouldn't just sit with women or men, or that is a responsibility of everybody. And I think I know that in the role that I sit in, we sit there and we say, well, you know, if you have women in your senior leadership team, it's going to increase your profitability. And then if you have diverse women, it's going to make it even more profitable. we almost justify it. We almost justify why, as women, we should have that seat at the table. But actually, we're excellent. We're excellent at what we do. We're worthy. We're enough. And we should just be there. And it's not because, and the profitability is a byproduct of our excellence. And I think that is something that really is, it's quite sad that we're still there, that we're justifying that you know, us being there, it will increase the profitability. It's because we're excellent. It's because we're great at what we do, not because we're women.
I think raising the awareness is probably one of the first and most important thing, because it's an unconscious, you know, societal, historical, traditional element that's brought to us, and then it influences our being today. But I think that's why everything that Louise says, it's absolutely relevant and important to this. And the other thing I wanted to mention is our role and what we do. So, for example, in Toyota, we are changing our values and behaviors within the business, and one of them is really resonating in here is the conscious inclusivity, to really start in the top down and bottom up, to really live and breathe conscious inclusivity. What does that mean? How success looks like when you talk about conscious inclusivity, and you really live and breathe this behavior, this value, and recognize the differences and appreciate all those differences to who brings what to the table. So I think that it's really important, and one is the awareness, but really to take this top-bottom approach within a corporate organization to bring that all together and change the perception and the behavior to drive this forward.
We have a group called Leading Ladies, and we've, you know, it's a very informal group, so there's no real structure to it. We're all on a chat group. So what we will do is really support each other. So, you know, when we have a, you know, more senior role come up, you know, we'll encourage, you know, the women on the group to apply for it. We offer mentoring, so the senior females within Trustford will mentor, you know, the more junior people on absolutely anything. So it's just providing that safe environment. We talk about the menopause and everything on that chat group because that's what those females want. But I think as leaders, especially the females in our Trust Ford, what we are getting better at is when a role becomes available is challenging the recruitment of that role or the internal process of that role, specifically around flexible working, because we have lots of mums in Trust Ford who work, you also want a career, and they can absolutely have both, but it's about challenging that, when they want to work flexibly, oh no, you need to be full-time. Well, why do you need to be full-time? And myself and the other females are quite good at picking that up and then getting in there and challenging. And I think that's what we've all got to do in terms of supporting and pulling through. But again, it's that safe environment.
Being our cheerleaders of our female colleagues, promoting them, sponsoring them, coaching them, no matter what level you're at, by the way. So, I get an awful lot of sponsorship from ladies who are not in leadership within Jaguar Land Rover, but who support me and give me the courage to keep going. So I think that's the absolute critical one, to keep bringing the conversation. We all have to be brave, and we shouldn't have to be, but we do. So to continue to challenge, to make the point we want to make, even if we might get accused of being aggressive for so doing, every single one of us just has to continue to be brave, because it's in the power of all of us. I don't think we can leave the change in the hands of the few at the top.